That's probably true for IRS guys and everybody else in the world. You're getting the jargon speak. So if you ever don't understand what I'm saying, then please raise your hand and I'll unjargon it for you. So the immigration laws that we have today are actually part of and founded upon the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. That's right. The laws that we have here in the 21st century started almost 60 years ago. The unfortunate part of that is we've never really gone back and updated our laws. We've never gone in and given it a comprehensive look and said, my gosh, that needs to go, this needs to change, this needs to come about. Rather, what we've done over the last 50 years, 60 years, is update it. Every few years we throw something in it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, one of the interesting parts about our immigration law, this 1952 Act, is that it was passed and voted on, became law over a presidential veto. President Truman actually vetoed the Immigration and Nationality Act, and Congress came back and overturned that veto, and it became law. Well, one of the consequences of never going back and fixing the problem with our law is there become natural consequences of the laws that we do pass. For example, we all know about the amnesty that passed in 1986, and it's been 25 years almost since President Reagan signed that amnesty. What we know about amnesty, the President thought, okay, we're going to give people who came to the country illegally a second chance. We're going to make them pay a fine, come forward, get in line, wait for your green card. Next thing it did is, okay, here's the trade-off for that. All right, Democrats, you want this, Republicans, what we're going to do for you, so we're going to have enforcement. And so we created what has become known today as the I-9 system, the employment verification system. Everybody here who has ever worked has filled out an immigration form. The I-9. Is there any employers in the room? No employers? The most complicated one-page form ever created by man. I mean, that's what the I-9 is. You can't fill it out. You just can't. Did you know the I-9 comes with a handbook called the Handbook for Employers? That's 178 pages long. Why do you need 178 pages to fill out a one-page form? Because that's what it is. It's an example of how our laws are broken. They don't make sense to society. What was missing from it? What was missing from that was future flow. We didn't figure out, okay, we're going to have everybody legalized, and then employers are going to be, I guess, our line of defense. But employers understood this fundamental fact that Congress didn't understand at the time. Once people got legal status, they probably weren't going to pick oranges anymore. They were probably going to get better jobs. They probably move and integrate into society more. So then you create the vacuum. And what IRCA didn't do, what the amnesty didn't do, is it didn't create future flow. It didn't say, here's how we're going to handle the next wave of people that we will need in America as our economy grows. It also didn't understand the impact of the baby boomer generation. I see a lot of baby boomers sitting around this room, me included. I'm, of course, on the tail end of the baby boomer generation. But you know, there's 80 million of us in the workforce today. We're beginning to retire, but not so many right now. In the generation behind us, it's only 40 million people. Right now, baby boomers, of people working today, 5 of us support 1 retiree. By the time I retire, 3 of you are going to support me. How do you like paying taxes now? The American economy needs to keep growing. And by growth, it's not just growth in efficiency, it's growth in labor. So what IRCA forgot to do was plan for future growth. That was the missing piece of the stool. And as a consequence, guess what happens when you have a vacuum? Nature affords a vacuum. And so it gets filled in. Employers say, okay, I'm going to fill out an I-9, but because this thing is so complicated, show me some documents. They show you documents. Hey, I'm not a forensics documents examiner. They look okay to me, and in they come. But many people use fake documents in the country. Some bad employers just ignore the I-9 process completely. And that's wrong. People shouldn't be doing that. But what happened next was actually a bigger problem. I'll give you a little background because it helps you understand why we're in the situation today. Because all you hear about today is there's 12 million illegal aliens in America. Well, true. How did they get here? Because then we have an amnesty back in basically 1990 was the amnesty date. And at that time, there was about 3.5 million people that were undocumented, and about 2.8 million, almost 3 million of them, got green cards. So how did we go from basically zero, and I think 12 million is a gross underestimate, I think it's probably closer to 20 million, to 20 million people were undocumented? How does that happen in literally probably 15 years? Because you really can't include the last couple of years. 16 years, I'll tell you how it happened. What was the Trade Center bombing? The important one, not the one on September 11th. 93. This is the key date. Because 93 is when the Clinton administration said, we have a border problem. So what the Clinton administration was doing before that, as Bush won, is they were enforcing the immigration laws of the I-9. They were doing audits, going to employers, and employers were behaving themselves. Well, after 93, Congress said, we need to fix this problem at the border. Unfortunately, Congress didn't give the Clinton administration a lot of money to do it. They still limited the resources. So they took the money from interior enforcement of immigration and put it at the borders. Still did a crappy job, but that's what they did. So you had no interior enforcement. Nobody was watching the employers. The employers still needed money. They needed people to come in and work in our hotel. They needed people to work in the chicken factory. How many of you, for example, have ever said to your child, son, you're 15 now, it's time to drop out of high school and go pluck some chickens up to the plant in Gainesville? None of us say that to our kids. We want our kids to be successful, go to college, and we like eating chicken. Somebody's got to do it. Now, I guess we could outsource it, which will, of course, cost jobs here in America and income and tax in the United States, or we bring in labor. But unfortunately, these plants, they have no visa to bring anybody in to flock chickens with. It just didn't exist. So all this money went out to the border. This is why that first Trade Center bombing is so important, because it turned the focus of America. We had 4 or 5 good years. The Soviet Union fell. We won. Hey, things are great. And all we realized there's another threat out there that we hadn't really picked up on before. So we had to focus on it. And it really wasn't until after 2003 or so that Congress finally understood that we also had to do interior enforcement in the United States and actually began allocating funds for this. Now, part of this interior enforcement began actually in 1996. In 1994, Steve Logan was the governor of California. His numbers were in the tank. He thought, I've got to get something to get me over the top so I can get reelected. So he came up with immigration at this time. And he began limiting immigrants from every bad problem in California, and he swept the victory in 1994. Republicans in Congress saw this, picked up on it. A bunch more people elected in Congress, and they passed in 1996 something called IRA, or IRA, if you speak dog language. IRA is the Illegal Immigration Reform Act and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. This act did 2 things that exacerbated and caused a great deal of undocumented immigration in the United States. Between 1990 and 1996, undocumented immigration population wavered between 500,000 to 1.5 million people, because people would basically come and go. But as they cracked down on the border more and more, and it became harder and harder to come in, people started saying, I'm just not going to go home. I'll just stay. Before that, we had this kind of flow of labor back and forth across the border. People would come, people would go. In 1996, Congress says this, okay, if you come in illegally, you can't ever get legal in this country without going home first. That's a fine law. I have no problem with that law. It's a good law. You can't reward people for coming into the documented way illegally. But then the law did this, which was the real problem. If you've ever been here illegally and you leave to go fix your problem, you can't come back for 10 years. So if I came here illegally, bad move, but I came, fell in love, got married, had kids, I can't get a green card. I can't become legal without being here for 10 years, and I'm not going to leave my wife to be here for 10 years. I'm not going to do it. So you had this reaction of people saying, I'm not going to go. And you can literally see the chart skyrocket in the undocumented immigrant population in America, starting about 1997 when it all went into effect. It's absolutely amazing when you look at it. It's no doubt the law of unintended consequences. So much so today that if you took the 12 million, let's use that for an argument, estimates say that there are approximately 25 to 30% of people who are documented who are married to U.S. citizens. Now, if you come in legally to America, and even if you become illegal, you overstay, you can get a green card here. You don't have to leave. The punishment doesn't apply to you. It's only illegal entrance that applies to you. But of that 12 million who came in illegally, about a third are married citizens. If you literally just said, okay, for you, this bar doesn't apply, go get a green card, you can solve a third of the immigration problem